Freedom has a taste to those who fight and almost die that the protected will never know.
Well, I can describe a typical cell and a typical day. I describe the cells. I was in a two-man cell and later a three-man cell, but they were essentially the same. Two-man cell was 7 by 9 feet, and they had boards that we slept on. We didn't have any mats, and they were arranged in an L shape, and the only room to move around was in this area here. There was enough room to take 3 steps back and forth. And that was the only exercise we were permitted to do. We were forbidden to do calisthenics or any kind of exercise. So to describe that cell, I use 5 B's. The boards, the bulb, the box, the bricks, and the bucket. And the boards, of course, was the bed that we slept on. And the bulb was a bare light bulb hanging from the ceiling in every cell. And they never turned them off. And you think, well, why wouldn't they turn it off during the daytime? And the reason is the cells were dark because of the third B, the bricks. They bricked up all the windows so we couldn't see out. It was forbidden to see or communicate with other prisoners. The fourth B was the box, a little loudspeaker box on the ceiling in every cell, and that was for piping in the propaganda every day. Unlike Korea, where they had so-called brainwashing classes, they didn't want us to see each other or have any contact, so they couldn't do the group training. They just piped the propaganda into each cell. And the last B was the rusty bucket, which we got out once a day to empty. That was our toilet.
Once we got into prison camp in Hanoi, the guards took their orders from the higher ups, and one day they'd be bad, the next day it'd be okay. It depended on what they wanted them to do, and they followed their orders pretty much. Although I think if you resisted them, they'd beat you up more than if you didn't.
Building had a courtyard and a seepage well, and you could drop a bucket down and pull up this muddy water and pour it on yourself to bathe and wash your clothes, and once a week shave with muddy water, cold of course, and grandma's lye soap. We'd get a piece of lye soap about that big every 60 days, and rusty Bulgarian razor blades. It was no fun. We're not permitted to have facial hair. Well, we'd get outside to bathe more like 2 or 3 times a week because the guards were lazy, and it annoyed them to have to stand guard over us while we got naked and bathed in the muddy water. Consequently, we'd get out, like I say, 2 or 3 times a week. And living in those little cells with the windows bricked up and the clay tile roof, they were like ovens in the summertime, and we couldn't keep clean because we were sweating all the time, and got heat rash. Fair-skinned guys like me got heat rash, which turned to pustules, which turned to boils, and one summer at one point I had 47 boils. Then the other activity in the morning was a meal. They'd come around with a chogi pole with the rice and soup. And we'd get a cereal bowl-sized bowl of rice and another similar bowl of soup, not Campbell's soup. It would be boiled greens, kind of a cross between spinach and seaweed. In the fall it would be squash, get a couple chunks of boiled squash, And the worst was the winter was cabbage. Cabbage every day. Just boiled. No seasoning, no meat. In the wintertime, they put a little pork fat or some kind of grease in the soup. And by the time we'd get it in the cells, it'd be cold and the grease would have congealed. Called it Vaseline soup.
I was put in a cell block with Denton and Stockdale, just the three of us, and he yelled around the corner and told me what the tap code was, and he said, we'll practice on the wall, and they heard him talking to me, and they put him in leg stocks right then for doing that, for talking. But we tapped all night long until I learned the tap code that one night with Jerry Denton, thank God. He taught me the tap code, and we used it ever since. And I was a camp communicator for the whole room when we moved into a bigger room. We had guys that were doing the talking, about 5 of us in 5 different rooms, and some of the stuff was classified, and so we didn't talk about it. I mean, escape ideas and things of that nature.
Like most equatorial third world countries, they take a siesta in the middle of the day. But even though that was seemed like a good idea to sleep away 2 hours of that miserable existence, and not so fast, we used that time to communicate, because the guards also took siesta. And there's only 1 or 2 guys wandering around camp for security. And so that's when we'd set up our communication, tapping on the wall, passing the news and so forth, and passing the names of any new people. And we could fill that 2 hours quite easily. And tapping, even when you get proficient, is slow. But you get all the names, and then you get the news of what the Vietnamese are trying to get out of us interrogation-wise, and then we talk about our families and our military experience, what airplanes we'd flown, where we'd been stationed. And when you run through all of that, that's about the 6 months point. You start telling jokes. And but how do you laugh on a thick wall? The way we did it was with our fingernails. Click, 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 click. And if it was a bad joke, you just thump the wall. Well, that took care of the 2 hours of siesta. They'd ring the gong, and we're all supposed to get up and think about our crimes again. And somewhere around 5 o'clock, the evening meal would come, and it was just a repeat of the morning meal. And then at 8 o'clock, Hanoi Hannah came on with a repeat of the morning broadcast. And at 9 o'clock, they rang the gong, and we were allowed to drop our mosquito net and climb under that, kill a few mosquitoes that snuck in, and go to sleep and do it all over again the next morning. We lived like that for years.
Our sole method of communicating between rooms was by tapping on the wall, and we used to sign off with something like this. and that's GBU, or God bless you.